Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the joint webinar organized by the European Training Foundation and the United Nations Industrial Development Organization. Today's conversation is about a very relevant topic, building successful partnerships for skills development. What can you expect from the discussion is to learn what's in for partnerships, how to build a winning partnership, and also to get some inspiration from your future partnerships. We will discuss this today with our distinguished speakers. We have a slight change on the agenda today. I have the great pleasure of introducing you to Virpi Stucki, Chief of Rural Entrepreneurship, Job Creation, and Human Security Division from UNIDO. Welcome, Virpi. Siria Taurelli, Senior Human Capital Development Expert, Coordinator for Governance and Quality Assurance at ETF. Welcome, Siria. And Elfi Klumpp, Head of Partnership Development at Festo Didactic. Welcome, Elfi. And last but not least, welcome to all our participants joining today. Welcome everyone from wherever you are. I would like to invite you to use the chat to say hi, let us know where you're watching from, and be ready to ask your questions. At the end of this session, we will have a short Q&A where we will try to address your questions. So stay tuned for the next hour. What this organization that we have here today, ETF, UNIDO, and Festo Didactic, have in common is their focus on skills development and their work in bringing together stakeholders for meaningful partnerships. So let's get started with the conversation. We're seeing more than ever that no organization nor business can survive these days if they operate in isolation. So this is why partnership is important. An African proverb says that if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you go together. So my first question for you today is to know how do you engage with partners. Let me start with Virpi. Virpi, before your current role, you were a business partnership officer at UNIDO, and also you used to manage a number of public-private development partnership projects. So it would be very interesting for us to know from you if you can let us a bit more how UNIDO at a strategic level works with partners. Over to you, Virpi.
Thank you very much, Karin, and all the audience. I'm very happy to be here today. So to your question, Karin, at UNIDO, we work at 3 different levels with partners, at the project level, at the program level, and at the platform level. So starting with the project level, as you mentioned, the methodology we use is called PPDP, Public-Private Development Partnership. And these are projects where the private, the public, and the development partners come together to solve a common problem, for example, related to the skills gap. To give you an example, in a recent project in Zambia, in the sector of heavy-duty equipment operators, Hitachi construction machinery company from Japan came to UNIDO because they had sold some equipment to the country and struggled finding the operators for the machines. And at the same time, the government of Zambia were also looking into updating their vocational training curricula on this domain. And then UNIDO also got involved, and of course, skills development is very much in the mandate of UNIDO's inclusive and industrial sustainable development. So we were very interested in coordinating the partnership with the financial support, of course, from the government of Japan. So this is just an example of a PPDP and where the partnership composition and all the partners basically need to bring in their expertise and comparative advantage of the skills domain. Now let me move into the program level. And here I would like to give an example of a PCP, which stands for Program for Country Partnership. And this is UNIDO's flagship initiative, where basically driven by the UNIDO's member state, we look into the key industrial development areas and potential bottlenecks. So the PCP starts by conducting a diagnostic on what are the key bottlenecks for industrial development. Then it goes into prioritizing the bottlenecks, because you cannot address everything at once. And then the role of UNIDO is to convene partnerships to solve these bottlenecks, while the government is in the driving seat and basically owning the PCP. And for example, there is a PCP Zambia where one of the identified bottlenecks was skills gaps. And therefore, the example I gave you earlier on fits nicely with the PCP Zambia context. And finally, going into the platforms, UNIDO convenes a number of multi-stakeholder platforms, for example, in the domain of skills development. And the platform there is the Learning and Knowledge Development Facility, the LKDF, which is the co-host of today. And multi-stakeholder platforms basically are important because this is the place where you can share the successes, but also the failures. Some partnership fail. And basically, it's important for all the partners and different sectors to understand what works and what might not work, to be able to then replicate the good practices and then avoid the shortcomings of something that did not necessarily work. So basically 3 levels: projects, programs, and platforms. Thank you. Karin, over to you.
Thank you, Virpi. It is really enlightening to see the different levels where UNIDO works, and also that you clearly said there are not only successes, but there are also failures. So it's also very important to always exchange ideas, exchange views, exchange experiences, and then see how can we work better and create new ways of working. So let me go to Syria and also then see what is the ETF experience on that. ETF has an extensive network in the EU and also in its neighboring countries. And this is in continuous expansion. The European Training Foundation is also the only EU agency that is a knowledge hub in human capital development. So, Syria, can you tell us how does ETF promote partnerships in the countries it cooperates with? Over to you, Syria.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, the ETF cooperates with 29 countries and territories, and on some specific projects, it cooperates with even more countries. And all this cooperation unfolds in the sector of education, training, lifelong learning, skills development for employment. That's quite a wide scope of work. And therefore, the approach based on partnership is really central to the work of the ETF. And the key principle is that a partnership should add to what each individual members of the partnership can do and cannot achieve alone. And this applies to both the type of partnerships that ETF builds together with other international organizations, such as you, such as UNIDO and many others, as well as in the countries the ETF works with. And when we speak about each country, of course, what is important is that the stakeholders of education, training, employment, they nurture their own partnership in order to achieve the objectives they have in terms of skills. We are therefore talking about partnerships that are multi-actor and that can unfold at various levels, at national, local, regional level, because in each environment and in each place there can be one or more different type of partnerships. And who are the actors involved in these partnerships? Well, when we speak about skills and development of skills, of course, the actors in the public sector and in the private sector, they become very, very relevant. if we think to skills and skill systems that should accompany people to employment or to maintain and remain in employment. In fact, skills and skills policies should be lead to results that are beneficial to the public in general, to the society, as well as to the business sector. But of course, they should be beneficial for the individuals, for them to acquire and maintain and update and develop skills that make them employable, that accompany them to good quality jobs throughout their life. The ETF conducted a study and analyzed 23 different types and the categories, say, of examples of public-private partnerships in the field of skills development. And through this study, we found that these PPPs can focus on knowledge, for example, skills assessment, skills anticipation, but also joint curriculum development. They can focus on resources, for example, laboratory equipment or other type of infrastructures, as well as on the actual provision of skills. And here we have the majority of these partnerships effectively operating. They can be about work-based learning, they can be about joint delivery of training, joint assessment, and so on and so forth. But that's not enough to define it, to identify these PPPs for skills development. Another important feature is that very often these partnerships are open. This was quite a surprise, meaning that new members, new actors, new organizations can join an existing partnership. And another characteristic, also quite important, is that these partnerships can vary in nature. They can be totally embedded into a vocational education and training systems, lifelong learning systems, but they can also be sometimes more on a pilot stage. They can represent innovative projects and so on. So that is to say that these partnerships for skills development are very diverse, and that's fine. Back to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Siria. And we can see that the ETF is working on a really wide range of scopes, education, skills, and the fact that partnerships are open, so multi-stakeholder, they're really embracing and are welcoming all new stakeholders. It is really enlightening. And and you also mentioned that the private sector is one of the key actors that needs to be involved, that you want to be involved. And we have here today, I have the pleasure to introduce you to Elfi from Festo Didactic. She's a representative from the private sector today, working at Festo Didactic in the global partnerships. And for sure, Elfi, you have clearly seen how critical it is to build partnership with a variety of actors yourself. So why do you think it is important for Festo to engage with international partners, and how do you engage with them? Over to you.
Yes, thank you, Karin. And thank you for having me here today. Great pleasure. I would say the short answer would be, as you rightly quoted at the beginning, never go alone, go together. But let me elaborate a bit what we do and how we engage. Festo is a private sector company in of automation technology and in education. We are a global company working in about 170 countries, and we are a family-owned company. So what is, on one hand, we are in the field of industry. We empower automation in factories, and on the other hand, we have a strong arm in the field of education and skills development. That means we empower people. So empowering industry and empowering people for us is in our DNA and goes together. And obviously, having around 300,000 customers in industry around the globe, those all need skills development and people who can bring the innovations to the shop floor. And this is why it is for us so important to engage with the industry businesses, of course, with the services industry, but a very strong focus from our company goes also into the engagement with the educational stakeholders. So in other words, we would like to bring together the education industry, the education demand, and the industry supply. So our purpose is to build the bridge between the industry and the education sector to fill the skills gap and help with our mission, industry development and education and skills development to build here the bridge and to fill the gap. This is maybe the answer from my side. And as one comment was here in the chat, I like that very much. This was about the importance of partnership, the 5 I's. I like that. He said it is innovation, it is information, it is influence and its impact, and it's increasing capacity. And I think this is a very valuable explanation here. It couldn't have been better said by anybody else, I guess. Back to you.
Thank you, Elfi. And thank you also for being so proactive and replying to one of the questions from our audience. You have mentioned that you are engaged in many fronts. You're really have a mission for empowering the users of your trainings, and you have also you're also involving educational stakeholders. So this is these are very relevant topics and stakeholders to be mentioned. So let me also then, before going to the next question, let me say hi back to all the participants. We are receiving a lot of messages from you, a lot of people telling where they are watching from. So let me just quickly go through a bit some of them. Hi Jihad, hi Mohammed, hi Lidana, hi No Brains, hi Danila from Bulgaria, Daria watching from Turkey. It is really a great pleasure to have so many people watching, as we have Karin also from Vienna. We have Amelia from Vienna, Inga from Georgia. Thanks, everyone. It is really a pleasure to have you here. Feel free to use the chat box to interact with us. We've seen also we're receiving a couple of questions. And we really hope you will leave this session with a lot of insights and inspiration for engaging with future partners. Feel free to use the chat then to share also successful stories from which we can learn from and make this event a platform for exchanging knowledge and best practices. So we said that ETF, UNIDO and Festo Didactic have a common focus on skills and human capital development initiatives that are inclusive and aim to support vulnerable and marginalized communities. So my next question is really in relation to this. So how do you work with your partners in a way to affect vulnerable communities through skills development initiatives? Let me go to Syria. We have seen how extensively ETF works with the countries it cooperates with, and also the extensive network you have built over the years. Could you tell us a bit more about how the work we do with your partners creates a positive impact on vulnerable communities?
Well, the ETF has a large range of projects that address social inclusion and particularly pay attention to youth, unemployed women, and other vulnerable groups. There are also European Commission important programs that really focus on these groups of population. I can mention the Youth Guarantee, which was very recently extended to the Southeast European countries, that really aims at bringing more young people and unemployed young people into the labor market with satisfactory employment. I want to mention two examples, two cases of public-private partnerships that are really instrumental to address the issue of inclusion. One in Serbia and one in Belgium. The one in Serbia is actually a partnership at local level that engages training centers, educational center provision, institutional provision, and companies. And through this partnership, they are brought together with the support of mediators. And the thing is, what this partnership does is really to offer to young unemployed people dedicated services such as individual career guidance and counseling, also group career guidance, an assessment of the competence they have, and then they support these young people to enter into work-based learning programs. And after that, there is a support to match with employers. There are other services provided to them, such as training on soft skills, on key competencies that people may be missing. And what's really striking is that the employment rate at the end of this program is really, really high. The other example comes from a European member states, Belgium in particular, and here the public employment service, or the public actor in the, on the public governmental side, has allied with a non-governmental organization who is able to also offer dedicated services to unemployed people, in particular people possessing a immigration background. So they are accompanied and supported until a job is a satisfactory job is found. And in both examples, you know, we found that through this partnership there is convergence between the world of education and training and the world of employment, but there is need for this mediation to occur. There is need for the additional services which would not be offered by anyone else unless there was this partnership. And another aspect I would like to highlight that also these cases bring attention to the fact that non-government organization or civil society beside the business partners also play an important role. So when we think about partnerships for skills development, we have to think to a variety of actors, including civil society organizations, because they are able to act as a facilitator very often between the world of education and the labor market and the private sector as such. So we have a triangular relations which also can create strong value for the learners, for the people. Back to you, Karin.
Thank you, Siria. It is really impressive what you've just mentioned, that also through your activities, you have made an impact in terms of the increase of the employment rate. And also, as you said, the partnership also with the civil society is really key. So this triangular type of partnership becomes really relevant, especially when you're looking to create greater impact. So let me then go now to Virpi. You directly support women from rural areas at UNIDO and provide them with the necessary skills for a better and empowering future. Can you share with us your experience on this and how partners work with you towards achieving this goal?
Thank you so much, Karin, for the question. As you mentioned, we do work, our target beneficiaries are women, youth, and vulnerable population. And I would like to describe the main methodology that we use when to ensure that we target the right segment of the community. And in any skills project, whether it's a technical skills or entrepreneurship skills, we start by diagnostic. So whether it's a value chain or whether it's a broader market diagnostic, but we need to know where the vulnerable groups are. Just to give an example, in an ongoing project in Egypt on women economic empowerment, there was some selected value chains that are part of the project, and UNIDO has conducted a thorough diagnostic to understand where, in this case, women are in these value chains. And once we know that, we can tailor the skills development programs accordingly. It really varies a lot, so we should not assume anything. For example, in the sector of medicinal and aromatic plants, the conclusion is that women are not really present in this value chain currently. So the design of the skills program has to be very different in comparison to, for example, the handicraft sector, which is mainly women-dominated sector, and the skills programs there are then related to very different topics like e-commerce and quality and finishing and branding of products. And another example is from DRC, where UNIDO has recently conducted a analysis and diagnostic using something called Market Systems Development Approach, MSD approach, to find out the key market failure behind the skills gap. And the results are just out, but based on that diagnostic, the project team could then design the program and also involve and including with the different partners, whether public or private or development partners, in a way that really focuses on the most vulnerable groups. And then, of course, once we have designed a program, a skills development program, we should communicate about it and definitely share lessons so that others can learn from the experience of UNIDO in this domain. Thank you so much, and over to you, Karin.
Thank you, Virpi. Thank you for also explaining, going through the type of methodologies, how UNIDO tries and create an impact and supports the vulnerable and marginalized community through, for instance, a market system development that looks at the root causes of poverty. So in order to create a transformative change. And you're also working a lot with Festo Didactic. And here now I'm going to you, Elfi. And we know that Festo Didactic is involved in many public-private development partnership initiatives, also with UNIDO. And you are trying in your work to address the skills gap with a specific attention to vulnerable and marginalized communities. And this requires a massive effort of collaboration with partners. So how do you work with your partners on this type of initiatives? Over to you, Elfi.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And maybe in line what my colleague Virpi just said, she elaborated in how UNIDO is approaching the project from diagnostics to implementation. And this is where we come into the picture from a private sector perspective. We try to bring our expertise to the table from our business experience, from our industry experience, but of course also from our education and skills development experience, and try to match, let's say, the requirement framework set by a public partner like UNIDO. And this is where and how we come into the picture and try to serve, to accommodate, to advocate with our tools from the education sector to round up, so to speak, the project. We have done with UNIDO, and of course this also needs finances and financing aid agencies, several projects, and maybe to mention one is the so-called H2O MACREC project. This project is dedicated to improving the municipal and industrial wastewater sector in the country of Morocco. And it was under the leadership of UNIDO and financed with US aid. And this has become very successful over the past 3 years. And now, of course, we have our lessons learned together with the trilateral partners here involved. But the project is at the point where we are thinking also to replicate and duplicate it with the lessons learned, so to speak, in other country. And as we are in the section in the session here together with UNIDO today, this is a wonderful example between two partners, UNIDO and Festo, from the private sector perspective. On the other hand, to stay in this context, we are contributing to a platform which is under UNIDO LKDF. It's a learning and skills development platform, and you might have, I thought, a link here in the chat, and the audience here in the session today might have a look to this platform. It's a wonderful another example of public-private partnership, and full of resources free to access. I also would like to underline a point that Siria mentioned before. When it comes to partnership, the civil society, I think in the receptive countries of the public-private partnership projects it's crucial to involve stakeholders of the civil society to accommodate and also to create the necessary impact of the project, or to create the foundation that a project can make a tremendous impact and be successful. This is about what we do. Of course, at Festo, we have numerous other public-private partnerships with other stakeholders around the globe, as we are working with business and ministries of education or labor market orientated agencies. So I welcome you to have a look at our webpage if you would like. And now back to you, Karin.
Thank you, Elfi. First of all, thank you also for mentioning the work you do with UNIDO and the LKDF platform as a multi-stakeholder platform. And we are happy actually to have this webinar with you, both ETF and Festo, with whom we are strongly collaborating on different fronts at project level, at advocacy level. We are also organizing a number of events and awareness raising initiatives such as this webinar. And I would also like to just add that we are receiving a lot of feedback from the audience. Thank you so much for this. We will try and address some of your questions a bit later on. And we have seen that it is widely recognized also from all your interventions that organizations that actively seek partnerships and collaborate with each other, they tend to perform better and they can achieve greater impact. Partnering becomes even more effective when it comes to also dealing with complex environments that require expertise and collaboration among different sectors, and where you also look for complementarity in your partners in order to make it a winning partnership. So my following question is really to learn from all of you what are the key factors for a successful partnership. Let me start with Elfi. So Elfi, I go back to you again. And can you share what are your views? What are the key factors for building a successful partnership?
Well, in my opinion, the most important factor is people, the brightness of people, the people you bring together in the organizations and the working together. This is for me a crucial element. And then, of course, innovation, yeah, to drive things forwards. And here we can bring a lot of innovation from our perspective, from the private sector perspective, from the clients and partners we have around us. That is a crucial success factor. And I would consider this, and then of course the tools where we are dedicating our mission in education, in digitalization, education in Industry 4.0, education in green technologies becoming more and more important. This is giving us a lot of tailwind for elaborating on future public-private partnerships. So it's people, it's innovation, and then of course it's bringing the right stakeholders on board. Of course, you need always, let's say, a public driver and a business partner, and of course you need a financing source. And as Siria mentioned, stakeholders in the country, civil society, to complete this picture, which brings me back to your intro, Karin, where you said never go alone, go together. So this is stakeholders, the third point. And maybe as mentioning a last point, this is if this is all correct, brightness of people, innovation, stakeholders, then the impact and the success speaks for itself, and it will take the necessary flow in a certain environment.
Thank you, Elfi. This is really enlightening, especially that you came up with as the first thing you thought about people. So the human side, working together, collaborating, and also innovation in order to be more prepared for the twin transition, which is green and digital. I also would like to know what is ETF takes on that. So, Siria, what do you think are the key success factors for building a successful partnership? Over to you.
Yes, well, I will try to add to what Elfi said. I can only agree with what she mentioned earlier. If I have to put additional ingredients for success, I would say partnerships should build on co-designing, co-shaping, making partnerships personalized to the extent possible. There is no unique model. There is no, as I tried to say earlier, not a single template. Partnerships can be very different. So it's important to take time to plan. Partnerships are not improvised. They do not emerge overnight. There is a need to nurture agreements, to discuss, to find solution in a way that if resources are mobilized, because we are talking about resources, human resources, our time, the expertise, budget, financial resources, and so on, they are used for benefits. It's important that partnerships lead to positive outcomes, to benefit for the people, the learners that acquire the skills. They should acquire good quality skills that help them throughout their life. And another, talking about ingredient for success is continuous collaboration, because it's the collaboration on a daily and a weekly basis that forge the partnership. Again, the partnership is not established as a functioning or effective from day one. It is an evolving process, and through commitment on collaboration, the partnership can be reinforced, can grow, can develop, and can be stronger in terms of innovation. And innovation also was, as mentioned by Elfi, I agree with her. I would say also partnerships as such, they can be innovative. They can represent an element or a good practice for more participatory governance of skills development, so that all the different actors are recognized, their contribution is acknowledged, is utilized in full. And I think if we move on to innovation in learning, innovation in skills development, but also in innovating the instruments we use, the type of governance approach, we have achieved a very good result.
Thank you, Siria. It is indeed true. Building partnership takes time. So, and as you said, you also, in order to create the relationship, to build the relationship and create a type of relationship of mutual trust. So, and this is also a way to, and also where you also need a lot of commitment in maintaining this partnership. So what is UNIDO's take on how, on the key factors for building a successful partnership? Over to you, Virpi.
Thank you so much, Karin. I have an easy task because I can only agree with Elfi, Siria, and you, Karin. But let me take another kind of way to the way I see partnerships. So partnerships are relationships. Equally to what Elfi was telling, these are about people. And as in a relationship, you have to start by building the trust. And this takes time. Often it can, sometimes it can take years, as in relationships. And during this trust building, you examined, are your values the same? Do you share mutual interest? Is the purpose of the partnership the same? Do you share the same goals and so forth? And you have to invest in this trust building because it's a relationship at the end of the day. Then once you have established the trust, you, as in a relationship, you might marry and you sign a paper. So partnership, you might sign a joint declaration or MOU or a joint project. So you basically tell the whole world that we are together. We want to work together. We agreed, we are committed, and we are investing in this partnership. And in this kind of formalization phase, it's important that everybody knows their roles and responsibilities, their accountabilities. The good thing about these partnerships is also that you can share the risks or even failures, but also, of course, you can celebrate the rewards together as a partners. And once you have formalized your partnership, you start basically building your life, your implementation. You expand, you work together, and then especially if the partnership is successful, you should definitely replicate it or scale it up and communicate about your successes or even failures, so that everybody can learn about these. So partnerships are relationships.
Thanks a lot, Virpi. And thanks for also making this example for and putting partnership as relationships indeed. So we have heard a lot about today and in these last interventions about how important it is to have a multi-stakeholder collaboration, about being open to bringing new partners, about building trust for and not only to start a partnership, but also to be committed and also have a long-standing type of partnership. But in order to do that, you also need to be committed. You need to communicate. You need to maintain a relationship of mutual trust, and you also need to have you need to be aligned and have common values, common interests. So let's try to make a wrap up before taking some questions. And let me ask the speakers with us today about their takeaways from today's discussion. Let me start with Siria.
Well, I think that my major takeaway is that the partnership approach can deliver multiple forms of agreements, of collaborations. And the important thing is that these agreements, collaborations, and partnerships, they lead to beneficial results for the learners, for the people who are learning new skills and competencies and can find their way in the labor market.
Thank you, Siria. Virpi?
Thank you, Karin. Similar to Elfi, I wrote down one of the first comments about the 5 I's. So thank you, Marga, who wrote this comment, and I repeat it once more. The 5 I's: innovation, information, influence, impact, and increasing capacity. So I definitely learned from this webinar. Thanks a lot. And this summarizes for me the discussion.
Thanks a lot, Virpi. And thanks also to our participant from the audience, Marga, for these lessons learned for all of us. Elfi, then let's also get some key takeaways from you from today's discussion.
Yeah, maybe 3 points. I definitely like as a first point those 5 I's that we all appreciate now and take away. The second one is the multi-stakeholder approach, which tells me that diversity brings together a good thing to develop and create another evolution and create bigger projects in a partnership. And the third thing, I like that marriage example from Virpi, a relationship is partnership, and a partnership is relationship. Maybe those 3.
Thanks a lot, Elfi. So let's then go back to our audience. We've received a huge number of questions. We will try to address some of them. I would like to ask the first question that we have received to Siria, which is really related to ETF. So the question is, does ETF establish partnership at local level, for instance, like through EU delegations in a given country, or at central level? Can you explain us a bit more, Siria?
What does the ETF do? Yes, ETF established also on its own initiative sometime partnerships with the help of European Union delegations in the various countries, and this very often concerns partnerships and alliances, I like to say, between different governmental agencies. It could be ministries, also implementing agencies. It could be tripartite councils on skills, on vocational education and training, as well as together with private sector. I would say this is perhaps the most frequent type of action implemented by the ETF, bringing the whole range of public stakeholders together with the private sectors. There are other type of partnerships. For example, ETF has started a number of networks, and these networks have their own dedication. We have a network of innovative teachers. Another network launched by the ETF is about skills development, skills anticipation, and it engages researchers. And another network, the most recent one, which I'm proud to mention here, is the GLAD network. And GLAD stands for Governance, Learning, Action, and Dialogues. And in GLAD, the concept of partnership is really central, is quintessential, because what we want to do is really to promote, encourage, and value the partnerships and alliances within each and every country.
Thanks a lot, Siria, and thanks a lot, Vola, for your question. We hope we have been able to address your question. Then let me go to another question that I would like actually to ask to both Virpi and Elfi to have a different perspective. And this is the question from Jaime. So the question is, do local enterprises take part in such partnership? Is the motivation of international and domestic enterprises same, different? Do they contribute to benefit from those partnerships differently? And I know that you've both been involved in a lot of projects, specifically also supporting local enterprises. So maybe it would be interesting to have your view on that. We maybe can start with Virpi.
Okay, and thanks a lot, Karin, and thanks, Jaime, for the question. I would not see. I'm talking about the PPDP projects that I have been involved in, and I don't see necessarily a big difference between the domestic and international enterprises. I see difference between the size, whether it's a multinational or small enterprise. And I mean, in the case, for example, in Morocco, we do have local multinational companies involved. In South Africa, we have also local companies involved. So they do, local enterprises do take part in partnerships. So that's the first part of the question. The motivation of international and domestic, same or different, it might be. Of course, multinationals might have more capacities to focus on or resources to focus on, for example, like social responsibility issues. Not saying that the locals are not taking care of that, but it's more that they have, multinationals have more resources for that. And then do they contribute and benefit differently? Yes, I would say also, because if it's a big company, the expectation is that they contribute something to the partnership in terms of resources, whether it's in kind, time, it could be equipment, it could be technical expertise, and in some cases also financial resources. Whereas a small enterprise, for example, locally might not necessarily be able to have similar contribution. And therefore we would need to design the partnership setup a little bit differently, depending on the size of the company. So I would like to hand over to Elfi for elaborating on this question.
Yes, thank you, Jaime, for the question. And I think Virpi has covered a major point. I would also say, first of all, indirectly, local businesses always have a share in it as well. Because when you come to a country and you get in touch with different people, with different stakeholders, so indirectly you can can have an influence on ideas, on capacity, on investment or whatever. But I would say it depends on the project, depends on the size, and it depends on the stakeholder involvement. And of course, as an international company, my guess would be that you have a different interest than a local company. Local company, obviously, you want to develop your local market first before you go international. From the international coming to a country, you go there because you want to develop the market from outside, but work together. And here comes the partnership in place with the local stakeholders. But I think in general, this is a really wide discussion and certainly a very valuable question.
Thanks a lot, Elfi, and also Jaime for posing this question. Siria, do you have something that you would like to also add in this regard?
I would like to add and also turn to the person with another question. Are we talking about domestic and international differences here? It is quite general. Shouldn't we talk about differences given by prior experience of social dialogue, social partnership? Because this could be sometimes the origin of a difference in countries or regions or areas or territories where there is a pre-existing long tradition of social dialogue. Then what we found in ETF studies that the partnerships are more easy to develop. They come from far somehow. Whereas where this tradition is more recent or is under development, then partnerships are also experiencing more difficulty. But I would say at the same time, they are more creative because they don't have an old legacy of pre-existing behavior and attitude and so on. And therefore, in countries with less tradition of cooperation between public and private, we also find more creative solutions. So I would not say international or domestic, but depends very much on the, say, legacy, tradition, and also environment, which is there at the moment. I hope this helps.
Thanks a lot, Siria, also for this clarification and also to bring in also the different perspectives that also come into play. So I think that it is time now to finalize today's conversation. We are well on time, so I'm really glad for that. We have heard today a lot of interesting perspective, and we've received a lot of interaction from our audience, a lot of questions. Thanks for having shared with us a great number of comments and questions. We see that there is really an interest in continuing this conversation, and we are happy to do so on the ETF open space or by contacting us directly through our channels that we have indicated in the chat. We know that we have not been able to address all questions, but we are happy to do so through the online community. You have also received in the chat box a lot of information regarding studies, such as the diagnostic study, and also a lot of other informations regarding the three organizations that we have here today. So let me first of all congratulate Virpi, Siria, and Elfi for the great work you are doing. Thank you for having shared with us your experience and your insights today. A big thanks to the ETF and UNIDO's LKDF communication teams. Thanks for your immense support. This event would have not been possible without you. And thanks to all of you, all our audience for today, for being with us and for having interacted with us. I would like to invite you to follow UNIDO, ETF, and Festo Didactic on the social media channels and to stay tuned for future initiatives. I wish you all a lovely continuation of the day. Thanks again, Virpi, Siria, and Elfi. And thanks, everyone. Have a lovely day.
And thank you, Karin.
Exactly. Thanks, Karin.
Thanks, Karin, and thanks to the audience.
Thanks, everyone.